It's a pleasure to be here, Clarice, and to be able to converse with you know them too, because that is also about what actually consulted about. You consult, you know, people. We live in a very, very collaborative world whereby in doing research, we need to hook up with other people who actually are doing the same thing. And we grew in research. And that is actually what Africa needs today, you know. Africa needs to synergize effort. Africa needs to grow as a single person. Growing as a single person, you know, it is an African adage which says that if you want to go fast, go alone, and you have to want to go far, go in a group. And I think that that's what Africa needs today. We need to valorize Africa. We have gone past that era whereby we spend our time criticizing, only looking at the negative things about African nations. I think that it is time now we'll be able to sing the song of Africa to say that we have potentials and that Africa is also that, you know, that fertile ground whereby we want to nurture and mature our own agriculture, nurture and mature our own expert scientists, nurture and mature our own health experts, nurture and mature our own humanism, as we will say. So I think it is important that we can start telling the story, and global insights, of course, is just doing the magic.
Absolutely.
I think elections, especially presidential elections, are very, very big moments for a country, every country in the world. And I think Tanzania is not going to be left behind in this. They are looking forward to having an elections, and everybody always wishes for a peaceful elections, especially for a country like Tanzania. Remember that their first multi-party elections was conducted in 1994. And of course, since then, they have been looking forward to having real elections, real democracy. And I think democracy has been growing. And one of the things that I think about the legacy of Tanzania, which they would not want to let down, is the memory of Julius Nyerere. All of us know about that monument. That is a historical monument, not just for Tanzania, but for Africa as a whole. We understand how Julius Nyerere fought for democracy, for the rule of law in that Tanzania. And it's very, very, we are very, very nostalgic about that role. You remember Julius Nyerere has even been pinned as to be canonized as a saint in the Catholic Church in Africa.
Yeah.
This is a very, very important step. And I think that Tanzanians are aware of this, and they will not spoil that legacy that Julius Nyerere kept. A lot of people who talk in Africa today quote Julius Nyerere. And going down to Jakarta, Kaga, I mean, Kwete, So, I mean, we are looking down to Magufuli, of course, yesterday, that the memories are still fresh in our mind, and we regret his passing on so soon. Remember, someone had coined the kind of democracy that should be practiced in Africa, and he put that adjective under the name of Magufuli, and he called it the Magufulization of politics in Africa. And what did that mean? I'm talking about Lumumba, Patrice Lumumba, who, of course, is also a Pan-Africanist. And what did he mean by Magufulization of Africa? He explained this by saying that, by the way John Magufuli ruled Tanzania, he thinks that if all other African countries should copy, then there will be this sanctity of politics in Africa. This is the holiness of politics in Africa. Of course, one cannot be purely holy. We remember that those who are celebrated as saints started as bad people, and therefore we cannot say that anybody is pure. Magufuli, of course, had his own faults. But then, if we want to look at it from the positive and the majority part of his rule, we will understand that Magufuli, of course, set a good precedent, which, of course, Samia is supposed to follow suit and make sure that actually not to kill that legacy, but uphold it. Remember that one of the greatest things, which, of course, Barack Obama noted, was the fact that it is easier to receive a Nobel Peace Prize than to defend it. You know, when you receive it, it's easy, you do well and receive, but to defend it up to a desired end is always an issue. And you think Tanzanians are people who are peace-loving. And nobody will like, it is often said that it is easy to start a conflict, especially electoral conflict, but it is very difficult to stop it. And we understand that Tanzanians are aware about this. Other countries in Africa too are aware about this. If we have gone past that era where people should look at us as men, those still in the dark ages who only resolve their problems through conflict, we think that conflicts now could be resolved on the table of negotiation, and Tanzanians are already aware of that. We have about 17 candidates going in for the election in Tanzania, which of course, this is a sign of democracy. I want to look at it positively, even though when I saw that, I condemned and I said that in a country like Tanzania, having 17 candidates running for presidential election, it is too much. People should spend time fixing the country than dividing it in. Because when you look at these rallies, you understand that most of the parties are sponsored behind by, the invisible hands. And when you talk very much about the multipolar world, people are afraid of accepting others in order to bring in their own contribution to the world to make a world a better place.
And that is why
I think that we need to have now a different narrative about issues of elections. The excitement for change of leadership, yes, it is well understood. Democracy, yes, it is well understood. But of course, let Africans be able to come to terms about what kind of democracy actually is and where is it even practiced. Because when you even look at democracy the way it was formulated in Greece, even the Greeks themselves do not more even follow that same line of democratic rules as the philosophers actually postulated, which is actually, the yardstick for democracy in the world. America has even shown that they are worth more than a democratic country today. And I think that what I'm saying is that Africans in general and Tanzanians in particular should actually know what they are looking for. I remember there is a prelate in Cameroon who even said spending over 90 billion francs or 60 billion francs to organize elections. Sometimes people should just come to terms with the fact that sometimes that money is not necessary to spend on organizing kinds of elections. But we accept that change is a constant thing and that each and every person and everything in the world changes. But what do Tanzanians really want?
And that is where it is very important. It's the will of Tanzania, the social contract that these candidates actually have with
Tanzanians. Exactly. What do they really want for themselves? And what leader do they think would transmit these goods into their desired wants? This is one of the things that we're looking at. Is it that angel coming from heaven who is spotless, who will come into actually salvage Tanzanians from, actually, we will say that every country has difficulties. But then I think one of the things that we should forget is that whether who wins, whether it's Mama Samia who wins, whether it's which other candidate that wins, Tanzanians get up the next morning as Tanzanians. And they should not forget that. And remember that when you perturb this peace that is supposed to reign, and all the money, Africa has been dubbed a country of wars and crisis. And who benefits from this crisis? Because the tendency is to actually push people, to lure people, to disrupt, to stir the storm in the teacup so that the country burns. But who benefits from this burning country? And you should know that Tanzania need to know that it is not for their good. Even in what they call democracy, it is not for their good to cause crisis in order to change government. In negotiation is better than actually crisis. And you should know that when crisis starts, the people who benefit are not Tanzanians. I usually tell people in one of my media outings that when you cause crisis, and the UN, of course, which has never solved any problem in the world, any crisis in the world, that's what we have to be telling Africans, because at each moment they say the UN is coming, but they forget that the UN has never solved any crisis in Africa. When tomorrow,
it comes to diplomatic, it's just all about interest.
It's about interest, and that is where I'm coming to Clarice, because when there's a crisis and the UN send the security forces, the military and whatsoever, Africans do not know that the security forces and order are being paid by the money from their raw materials. The UN doesn't spend. The UN doesn't have money to spend on that. When the UN send actually a mission, a security mission to your country, you are paid. They are paid. Those security forces are paid by the money from their your natural resources. So this is what Africans need to know, that it is better to sort our issues within ourselves than to actually be coerced by other people, because all of these things, we understand that democracy can actually be formulated the way we Africans want it, and we can do better. Because let me tell you, Clarice, the other day we were in Congo, and one of the things that people talked about Congo, if you do not go to on the ground, you will not understand that actually most of those things that people say is just to cause chaos about certain countries. And that you will find that the people outside the outside world, the international organization, what the image they have is the image of interest that they have about the country. It's not even an image of love to see the country in a democratic way. And there is this hypothesis that when you hear the international community condemn a leader very vehemently and seriously and constantly, they know that that leader is doing something for their people. If you go online to read about Tanzania today, you'll be baffled by what you see. But what I know is that lady Samia Suluhu is at least doing her best. She took up from Magufuli, and I'm sure that quite there are a lot of things that she needs to put in place for the country to take up, and she has been doing in terms of agriculture, in terms of education, in terms of other areas, which we have to appreciate. But the point is, they are there. But the tendency we have is that we always want to look at the bleak picture of the country, because African hardly appreciate their own. They keep on appreciating that democracy and rule of law, good governance is only across the continent. But it is here. Our own people show us. But because we do not believe in our own, just like the Bibika will say that we know you and we know where you come from, we know your parents, and nothing good can come from you. And I was of this opinion during the period of Magufuli, of the opinion that Magufuli actually, like the successor, actually is portraying something that is different in Africa. Because in effect, when you talked about John Magufuli, you didn't actually liken him to the many tribes that you had in Tanzania. When you talk about John Magufuli, you just knew that he was a Tanzanian. Unlike the narrative where people have, when you call, for example, Paul Biya of Cameroon, they will tell that he is of the Bully tribe of here, and that he is from the center of Cameroon. And what is that? That is already disintegrating the country. And therefore, a leader, once you become a leader, you become a microcosm of your people. You become that single whole that represents the people of a mighty whole. And therefore, Clarice, usually I talk too much. Yes. I think that women have proven to be actually the lifesavers, political lifesavers in countries around the world. When you look at the leadership role that Sirleaf Johnson held in Liberia, and of course, at that very particular moment where Liberia was almost sinking, and I know politically the analysis, of course, about the coming of Sirleaf Johnson to power in Liberia, it was very, very complicated because, you know, Liberia was coming out of war, and the able men were almost not there in Liberia because many had been killed, many had run out of the country, and women had now taken the power because women are always there. This is one of the things we should celebrate about women, is that the women are always there in matter what, because why the men run away for their lives, the women, they remain with the children, they remain with the earth, they remain with the country, and they remain with life, being life. So I think coming out from Liberia and getting to Tanzania now with Samia, I think she has proven her worth. Of course, by just being the vice president of John Magufuli, I think that was something just more than saying that John Magufuli had a vice president. That was what I could call an iron lady at that particular time, being the vice president and taking over power with the continuity, because many had feared that taking power halfway, especially with the person of Magufuli, the country Tanzania was going to go on fire, because they didn't believe that she was going to actually wear the shoe of John Magufuli. Remember that, I'm happy to see that many opposition parties have risen up, of course, During the period of John Magufuli, the opposition was almost lame. It was almost inexistent. I mean, I'm talking about the strength of the opposition. Yeah. And why? And the analysis of this I did, even during the period of Magufuli, was that when you are a leader, when you are a visionary leader, and you are a leader who solves matter, who solves the problems of your country, the opposition have very little to do in your country. Absolutely. This is one of the things that I saw in Tanzania. I mean, that was the school of thought that I shared in Tanzania, that during the period of Magufuli, the opposition had very little to criticize. And therefore, the opposition, was almost inexistent in terms of opposition. But rising now, of course, about 17 of them going for election, and who are tackling Samia, who actually is going in for the election. I think that we have to look at that as a mother who actually has realized the desire, has realized, the urge of the people, the wants of the people to be able to continue with the legacy in terms of agriculture, in terms of technology, in terms of education, health. I mean, we have been watching that, and a lot of people have been able to comment on what she has done. Not only a continuation of John Magufuli, she has even formulated new programs for Tanzania, which we must laud and we must applaud. And I think that if there is this overwhelming, let me say overwhelming support for her, it is because people have seen what she can be able to do as a woman. And we are coming out from that period whereby people thought that the woman had a secondary role. And now the issue of feminism now comes in. This is what we could celebrate as feminism. Feminism is not just about fighting to who is who or who is upper, who is not. Feminism is also about the intelligence. It's also about technology. It's also about being a technocrat in what you are doing. And I think that she's able to prove this, because I'm happy that we have people here who Pan-African is here. One of the papers I wrote was on black consciousness. Yes. And one of the aspects of black consciousness is feminism. When we talk about negritude, when we talk about Pan-Africanism, when we talk about black consciousness, as was celebrated in South Africa, I'm happy that we have a panelist from South Africa with yes. Steve Biko. Of course, I'm longing to come to South Africa to leave the legacy of Steve Biko in South Africa. And I'm happy that recently I hear a court case that the children brought up about his death. And I hope that they should be able to pay a reparation to the family. I think when we talk about black consciousness, it is also about feminism, because the rising of women at that particular moment where they thought that women were supposed to have the secondary role, is now women are proving that they too can be worth something. And we are seeing it with Samia, and I know, of course, I'm not a prophet, of course, from the trends, from the studies that we are seeing, she is having quite some support that is cropping up for her in Tanzania. And we should give a woman a chance. It is not just inspiring the women in Tanzania, it is inspiring the women all of Africa. And I see that many other women are rising up now and getting into politics.
Absolutely.
Yes, we as a civil society leader, I usually tell people that actually conducting free and fair elections is a political will of the government in place. Why do I say so? You understand, Clarice, that the issues of electoral commissions are only in Africa. When you go to France, there is no independent electoral commission. You know, elections are organized by the territorial administration. When you go to the United States, it is the same thing. When you go to Europe as a whole, there is nothing like independent electoral commissions. But because of the goodwill of the government, elections are organized in a free and fair manner. And therefore, I usually say it takes the goodwill. And I say that elections are rigged before the elections day.
Can we understand better?
Okay. The issue is, when you organize election, when you plan elections, and first of all, you discourage or you do not put feasible means for people to register and vote, you are rigging elections. When people are not really able to register, do you know that already you are rigging elections? You are. Secondly, because we have people who come on election day and they shout that the civil society over there, political parties, the government has done this. But the process to elections, what have they been doing to make sure that citizens register and vote? Or do they just want to clamor for a rigging of elections on the elections day? Elections are rigged before the elections day. Secondly, when the government attack opposition leaders and do not give them accessibility to, or maybe the opportunity to be able to practice and exercise their political rights, it is rigging elections. Of course, we have had many occasions. Of course, we can also talk about the issue of Tanzania, where you have the main opposition leader, Tondo, of course, who is getting into. Well, I want to actually get to know exactly for what purpose he is actually being arbitrarily arrested. I want to say arbitrarily because there are a lot of been condemnation about the arrest. So you see, if this is confirmed to be that the government has tracked and is tagging Mr. Tondo, who will say that the government is rigging elections. Because when you disqualify unjustly opposition parties, you are rigging an elections.
But treason is something that is punishable by law.
By law, of course, it is. It means that actually there is something that he did that actually should, call for this kind of punishment. So there are a lot of mechanisms towards elections that you think that the government could have already even rigged the election before election day. So elections are rigged before and after elections, not on elections day. Elections day is just a culmination of what happened during the period of registration and all of those. And therefore, everybody seems to be implicated in the matter of the process towards the election day. The civil society, the religious leaders, the political leaders, I mean, the government itself, everybody is supposed to be implicated, even when it comes to the documents that you must possess to register for elections. If those documents are actually not being established for the citizens, it means that there is a way of rigging. That's another way of rigging elections. And we have had that in many other countries, where people cry foul and say they register or they have this identity card and they're not able to have, so they are not ready to register. And some people even cry foul to say that there is this actually plan of putting some people out of a electoral process by not delivering or establishing a national identity card so that they can register. So there are a lot of mechanisms into this. And the role of the civil society in every country is very, very fundamental, because a civil society activist is a whistleblower. And that is why in every country, we have always advocated that there should be civil society activists. But it's just that the role of the civil society has been misunderstood by so many people. A civil society is supposed to be somebody, an activist is supposed to be somebody who is not partisan. He is, as I call it, is a whistleblower. Whether it is from the left or from the right and it's something wrong, you blow the whistle.
Actually, a neutral body.
A neutral body. That is the rule of the civil society. But we have realized that in most countries in the world, the civil society leverage their leadership role for political or economic gains. And now they get implicated or they get too partisan in what is happening in the country. And that is why when they start tracking them down because of their role, they start complaining and saying that the government is autocratic, the government is dictatorship, and there are arbitrary arrests and all of that. Meanwhile, they have put themselves into it. Secondly, Clarice, much of the evil of external intervention that we have in most countries is being brought by civil society activists, because they go into alliance with foreigners. And what happened? The foreigners that come in through them. You have civil society activists who only have their offices in their suitcases. They do not have offices, and they are working with external bodies to destabilize their country of origin,
and
because
of
president.
It is imperative to check information.
Exactly, it's very, very important. And therefore, when the government starts checking the information, now they say that there is censorship, there is cracking down on civil society, there's cracking down. You remember that the government, the president of a republic, in the first place in every country, one of the first rules of the president of a republic is to ensure the territorial integrity of the country. Absolutely. This is the first person, this is the first political or the first general of the country, is to ensure the territorial integrity of the country. And therefore, when he sees that the borders are porous, he has to close them. When he sees that the political activism is not helping the country and that they are letting in actually the external forces to destabilize the country, it is a rule of the president of the republic to be able to crack down on it. And therefore, when you start cracking down because you want to ensure the peace and serenity of the people of the country, people start talking about how they are cracking down on them. So I think that, exactly, most civil society do not know that they need formation in order to actually work as civil society activities. They need a lot of formation. And that is what we have been engaged in doing that. Informing civil society to know their role. Because if you do not know their role, you will always have this tendency of going out of their calling because of your personal gain, or because of what the Francois Bayard, I've also called Francois Bayard in his book L'État en Afrique, la politique du vent. You always going for that issue of the belly politics, the belly civil society activism, and all of that, which of course any country would not accept that. Even the United States of America, they will not accept that. They will deport you.
Absolutely.
Clarice, most recently, in the 20th century, we started talking about globalization.
Yeah.
And one of the things, the ideas of globalization, of course, was that countries should come to a world stage, to an arena, and collaborate. And coming to collaborate means that you are coming with something to the world market, to this central arena to collaborate. That is globalization. You give and you take. And one of the questions that I often ask Africans is, what are they bringing to the world market? Because if you do not have anything to compete with in the world market, you will continue to be what they call a reservoir. And there is no way in which you can grow if you only receive. You can only grow from, most importantly, from what you produce. You can only grow from what actually you consume. And when you produce, especially things that you do not consume, you cannot grow. So you realize most Africans have misplaced priorities in their growth and in their production. We talked about Pan-Africanism, and of course, and you even made mention of multipolar world. A multipolar world is also in the light of Pan-African, a world of global market, a world of collaboration, a world of cooperation, whereby the decisions in the world is not just taken from a single country called a powerful country, for example, America. And in that case, now we're talking about unipolar world. We are talking about a world where each and every country will be able to give a decision according to what it offers to the world. And it is very, very important. Remember, there is also a narrative I'm coming out with, which I call the economic identity of Africa.
Absolutely.
And it is gaining a lot of grounds. It's a concept that I'm bringing up, whereby I ask myself, Pan-Africanist for so long, starting from W.E. Du Bois, going down to the negritude activists, Seda Senghor, yes, the negritude activists, Senghor and the rest, and going down to even those who are Afrocentrism, those of black consciousness, and most people, and even the activism of black is beautiful and all of those. What is all that? And I question and I say, we keep on celebrating the cultural identity. We keep on talking about how black is beautiful. And so what? And I'm bringing up this new narrative to talk about the economic identity of Africans. This one will get into another part of our plan.
Enter the political discourse of politicians, not just in Tanzania, but Africa, to ensure this continuity of Pan-Africanism that brings about development economically.
Of course, my concept is that anybody who has the economy, his culture is respected. Anybody who has the economic power has the cultural strength. You do not need to sing about culture. You just need to valorize yourself economically, and you inadvertently you find that your identity is respected. You will not hear America keep on talking about identity. You will not hear Europe talk about identity, but you hear them talking about agriculture. You hear them talking about engineering. You hear them talking about maybe a lot of things that actually buttress their economy. And one of the things that I got to say, we are sitting on gold and begging for whatsoever elsewhere. And that if we should harness all of these riches of Africa, and Africans, if Tanzania has this, Cameroon has that, South Africa has this, other countries in Africa, we bring this thing together and work in the synergy. We will be building the economic identity. Even the climate that we have is an asset that we need to use and be able to leverage for the economic growth of Africa. The forests that we have, the mineral resources that we have, we can be able to use that to boost our identity. And this is the new concept about bringing, giving Africa that new strength that needs to be respected. And that tomorrow, when we are going to the global market, we will not be going there at the level of solidarity, but we'll be going to the global market at the level of authority. This is actually the concept that I'm bringing about. And you were asking about actually this concept of external relations. Of course, external relation is built on the power of what you have. External relation is not built only on politics, it is also built, and most importantly, on the economy. Because countries will come to collaborate with you according to what you have. Remember, we say that in diplomacy, there are no permanent enemies and there are no permanent friends, but there is a permanent interest. And what is that interest? You will not pretend to go into diplomacy or to in partnership with somebody that you do not have anything to offer. And therefore, countries will align with you according to what you have. And I think that this is actually one of the things that Samia should develop as her own external policy. That in Tanzania, Tanzania should develop its tourism potentials. And that Tanzania should develop mechanize its agriculture. Tanzania should try to discover the rich undersoiled potentials that they have. So that tomorrow, any country that wants to come to Tanzania or any country that wants partnership with Tanzania, it should not be that it is only about talking about giving aid to Tanzania each time. Giving aid to Tanzania each time, it should be the fact that the country is coming because it is coming to collaborate in terms of exchange of goods and services. This is creating value to Tanzania. And that Samia should not make Tanzanian youth, for example, begin to develop that urge to follow the dangerous route in the desert to go to Europe. And rather, that Tanzania should be a new destination for Africans and Europeans and Americans to come there.
I think that is already happening. We just need to portray Africa the right way.
That's right.
Because I think during a documentary where you saw Samia herself taking the journalists all through Tanzania, discovering the destination, the beauty of the country, it actually portrays how beautiful the continent is. And I think with a change in mindset, we'll be able to look at the treasures of the continent, valorize the treasures, and work towards
just one thing, Clarice, just a single thing. When we were growing up, we learned in history books or in geography about Mount Kilimanjaro. Absolutely. Do you know about that? And do you know how, there was that age for some of us to be able to one day discover that Mount Kilimanjaro that is found in Tanzania. And up to today, that's a rich touristic potential. And we grew up today, and very little you know about some of those potentials, because there is this tendency of shielding the good things that we have in Africa and only portray what is in Europe. I remember recently there was this condemnation of most documentaries that your colleague journalists, they do, and that most of those documentaries, which are sponsored by Europe and America, is only to give a dark picture of Africa. They never show the good part of Africa. And today we have started giving a new narrative to that, and you journalists have to do your job.
Absolutely.
That's what would be that, like in Tanzania, like in any other country, especially Africa, they should put the media and media practitioner on the scanner. Let me tell you, most of all of these things that infiltrate the country, they infiltrate with the complicity of the media and the media practitioners, because most of these organizations that get in, they are credibilized by the media. They are authenticated by the media. The stories are written by the media, because when you look at it all, to actually their indelible marks are left by the media, and it is the media that tell the story. And what I ask the media practitioners to do is, especially now in Tanzania, is to be patriotic. Let them know that every act that they commit at this particular moment in time is an act that can either mar or fix the country. And if they are patriotic, they will always look for those positive things that they can project about the country. A country is not in the external world by the media. And that is why when they push the government to the world and the government start censoring them, they begin to cry foul. It is because most media houses and organs have sold the country out even before any other thing. They sell the country out. They give different narratives about the country because of their personal aggrandizement, because of their selfishness, because they want to be able to make big selfishly at the detriment of the country. And therefore, I think that the media plays a very, very preponderant role in every country. And every media practitioner should be moralized, should be educated to know that the first issue that they have to do is to serve the country. And that is why I always ask that the government should be able to canalize the work of the media. Canalizing is different from censoring them. Meaning that what? To canalize in first place is also to keep them comfortable. Because sometimes most of these media practitioners, because of their miserable conditions, they go and do funny things. And I think that if their employers are able to keep them well, and that's why there needs to be regulations on this, and that journalists too should be well paid, so that they don't go on giving negative impressions about their country. When they go looking for food, and the quest for looking for food, they go committing acts, and some of these acts are very detrimental to the country. And therefore, at this very crucial moment in Tanzania, I enjoin the media that we want to enjoy the beauty of the election. The beauty of the election in this country that is very historic, and we have very good memories about the country, and that to enjoy this country and this moment of election, it is the media to feed us with. And please don't feed us with poison from Tanzania. Feed us with good food, not junk food, but real natural food that we have in Africa.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure, yeah,
food,
we are going
of course, it's a peaceful atmosphere.